There are wounds a man cannot see with his eyes, yet they bleed inside the soul. And many of you listening to me right now are smiling on the outside, but carrying the weight of people who hurt you so deeply that even time refused to erase it. There are pains that no scripture you memorize seem to silence. Betrayal so sharp that you began to question your own worth, your discernment, even your love for God. Hear me, hurt is real, but God's healing is more real. And until you understand how heaven expects you to deal with people who wounded you, you will keep reliving battles that God already gave you the victory for. There are people who never apologized, people who never explained, people who acted like they didn't break you, and you've been asking, Lord, how do I move forward? How do I become whole again? Listen carefully. God does not teach you to deal with people first. He teaches you to deal with your heart. Because if the heart is not healed, even love becomes a weapon you use against yourself. Many of you are angry, not because you are evil, but because you cared sincerely, you invested genuinely, you believed too honestly, and the strike came from where you trusted the most. But hear the wisdom of God. Pain is not always an enemy. Sometimes it is a prophet. It reveals who truly belongs in your destiny and who only entered your life as a lesson. When people hurt you, the first thing God teaches is silence. Not cowardice, not weakness, silence, because the flesh is loud when the soul is wounded. If you speak too quickly, you will speak from pain, not from purpose. And many destinies have been damaged because people reacted before they healed. The second thing God teaches is perspective. Not every person who hurt you was an enemy. Some were reflections of their own brokenness. People give what they have, and some only have wounds to share. If you anchor your identity to the actions of broken men, you will spend your life bleeding from battles that were never yours. And then God teaches you release, not because they were right, not because you are weak, but because your destiny is too expensive to fund the prison of unforgiveness. Every day you hold someone in the jail of your heart, you become the warden of your own pain. Forgiveness is not endorsement. Forgiveness is freedom. You don't forgive because it didn't hurt. You forgive because God cannot build a palace on a foundation filled with poison. You forgive so that heaven can trust you with the next chapter. You forgive because the version of you that God is calling cannot rise while dragging the corpses of yesterday. And finally, God teaches you growth. When you deal with people who hurt you, you don't remain the same. You become wiser without becoming hardened. You become discerning without becoming suspicious. You learn to love with intelligence. You learn to give with understanding. You learn to open your heart but not abandon your boundaries. Hear me. Pain is not the full story. It is only the doorway. God uses what hurt you to reveal what he placed in you. And when he's done healing you, you will look at the very people who wounded you and realize he lifted you through the very thing that tried to break you. If you are listening to me now, this is God speaking to your heart. Release them. Heal, grow, rise, because your destiny is calling. And the future God prepared is too glorious for you to remain tied to the shadows of those who hurt you. Healing begins when you allow God to confront the wounds you have hidden from yourself. Many people walk through life bleeding quietly, carrying scars they refuse to acknowledge, because acknowledging them feels like reopening a chapter they desperately want to forget. But what you deny does not disappear. It simply buries itself deeper, influencing your thoughts, your relationships, your decisions, and even your walk with God. Healing does not start when the pain stops hurting. Healing starts when you finally allow the light of God to enter places you have kept locked away. There are wounds that sermons did not touch, prayers did not soothe, and time did not erase. Not because God is unable to heal, but because healing requires your permission. God does not force himself into a heart that pretends to be whole. He waits until you are tired of acting fine, tired of carrying the weight alone, and ready to allow him to touch what you have been protecting out of fear. Some of you have buried pain so deeply that it has become part of your identity. You do not even realize how much of your personality is built around what someone did to you. The anger you call strength, the silence you call maturity, the distance you call wisdom may actually be defense mechanisms formed from wounds you never confronted. God, in his love, will begin to shine a light on these hidden places, not to shame you but to liberate you. He will bring memories back to the surface, not to torment you, but to show you where healing needs to begin. Many times, when you feel like your emotions are breaking again, it is not always an attack. Sometimes it is God resurfacing a wound you refuse to look at so he can finally heal it. True healing requires honesty. You must come before God without filters, without religious language, without pretending to be strong. You must learn to say, Lord, I am hurting. I was wronged. I am angry. I feel betrayed. I feel abandoned. Heaven responds to sincerity. Healing is not for those who act like nothing happened. Healing is for those who admit they are bleeding. When you genuinely open up, God begins to deal with the root, not the symptoms. It touches the place where the betrayal entered, where the rejection settled, where the disappointment shaped your perspective. He does not deal with the surface, because surface healing never lasts. Surface healing helps you function, but it does not help you transform. And in the realm of the spirit, functionality without transformation is a prison. There are people who learn to survive their pain but never learn to heal from it. They function at work, in ministry, in friendships, yet inside they remain fragile. One wrong word triggers them. One mistake from someone they love breaks them. One reminder of the past paralyzes them. Survival is not healing, it is only endurance. Healing, on the other hand, restores you to the version of yourself before the wound. And even better, healing allows you to love without fear, trust without trembling, and move forward without constantly looking backward. The process of healing will require vulnerability. God will challenge you to open doors you closed years ago. He will ask you to revisit conversations, emotions, and memories you locked away because you believe nothing good could come from them. But God does not expose wounds to embarrass you. He exposes wounds to heal you. The enemy wants you to keep them hidden, because hidden wounds grow into strongholds. Hidden pain becomes bitterness. Hidden disappointment becomes unbelief. Hidden betrayal becomes isolation. And these strongholds become prisons that limit your destiny. But when God begins to confront what you have hidden, chains begin to break, because nothing that is exposed before God can remain in power. Healing also demands surrender. You cannot hold the wound and hold God's hand at the same time. You must choose to let him rewrite the narrative. You must choose to let him redefine your identity. You must choose to let him uproot the lies that pain planted in your heart. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is releasing the version of yourself that pain created. You grew accustomed to the guarded, distant, hardened version of you, but God is calling you back to tenderness, to purity of heart, to trust, to openness, to emotional freedom. He is calling you back to the place where your heart is soft enough to feel again, yet strong enough not to break at everything. Healing is not instant. It is a journey. God walks layer by layer, removing shame, anger, fear, and rejection until you finally stand whole again. The deeper the wound, the deeper the walk. But each time you allow him to confront another layer, something within you becomes lighter, stronger, and clearer. And slowly you begin to realize that healing was never about forgetting what happened. It was about reclaiming who you were before the wound tried to define you. Forgiveness is not approval of what happened. It is the release that frees your destiny to move again. Many people struggle with forgiveness because they believe forgiving someone means saying the pain was justified or the betrayal was acceptable. But forgiveness is not a declaration of innocence. It is a declaration of freedom. When you refuse to forgive, you do not imprison the offender, you imprison yourself. You remain tied to an event that continues to influence your emotions, your choices, and your peace. Forgiveness is the key God gives you to unlock the door of your own future. It is not about excusing the behavior of another person. It is about refusing to sacrifice your destiny on the altar of someone else's actions. Unforgiveness is a burden that grows heavier with time. At first, it feels like strength. You tell yourself you will never allow them to hurt you again, and so you start building walls. But with every wall, you lose a part of yourself. You lose access to your own vulnerability, your joy, your ability to trust. What you think is protection slowly becomes isolation. Unforgiveness hardens the heart until nothing pure can flow through it. It clouds your discernment, poisons your expectations, and makes you suspicious even of those who genuinely love you. Many destinies have been delayed, not because the devil was too strong, but because the heart was too wounded to release the offense. Forgiveness does not begin with emotion, it begins with decision. You may not feel like forgiving, you may not feel healed, you may not feel ready, but forgiveness is not about feeling. It is about choosing alignment with God's nature. The kingdom operates through principles, and forgiveness is one of the highest proofs of spiritual maturity. It takes strength to confront pain, but it takes greater strength to release it. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is victory over the hold that pain tried to establish in your life. When you forgive, you are not denying what happened. You are denying the event, the power to define the rest of your life. You are choosing to move forward. Even if the past has not fully faded, you are choosing to open your heart again, even if it still trembles. You are choosing to trust God with justice, because forgiveness is also surrender. It is acknowledging that God sees, God knows, and God rewards. Nothing escapes his eyes. No betrayal goes unnoticed. No wound is ignored. When you release someone, you are not abandoning justice. You are placing justice in the hands of the only one who can execute it righteously. There are people who will never apologize. There are people who will never understand how deeply they hurt you. There are people who will rewrite the story to make themselves appear innocent. But forgiveness is not for them. It is for you. It is the decision to stop rehearsing the pain, to stop feeding the memory, to stop carrying the bitterness. Some of you have carried on forgiveness for so long that it has become a companion. You wake up with it, you sleep with it, you think with it. It influences your self-esteem, your relationships, your decisions, your joy. But the moment you forgive, you reclaim ownership of your heart. You restore purity to your thoughts. You create room for God to speak again, because unforgiveness clogs the ears of the spirit. Forgiveness is a spiritual law that activates divine restoration. As long as the heart remains offended, it cannot receive. Offense creates spiritual blockage. It interrupts flow. It interrupts clarity. It interrupts grace. Many people pray for open doors while holding on to closed hearts. But when you forgive, you open the channels of the spirit again. You allow God to pour healing, wisdom, and new opportunities into your life. Forgiveness is the bridge between the pain of yesterday and the promise of tomorrow. The journey of forgiveness may be slow. You may have to forgive the same person repeatedly until your emotions align with your decision. You may have to fight thoughts that bring the memory back. You may have to silence the urge to retaliate. But each time you choose forgiveness, the grip of the past weakens. Each time you release the offense, your soul grows lighter. You begin to breathe again. You begin to see clearly again. You begin to dream again. Forgiveness does not erase the memory, but it removes the sting. It transforms the wound into wisdom, the pain into power, the betrayal into discernment. And as you continue to walk in forgiveness, something beautiful begins to happen. You realize the person who once had the power to break you no longer has the power to bind you. You reclaim your joy. You reclaim your voice. You reclaim your destiny, because forgiveness is the posture that positions you to rise beyond everything that tried to keep you bound. God uses the pain people caused you as a refining tool to shape your discernment, wisdom, and future strength. Many of the encounters that broke you were not random. They were allowed to chisel something within you that comfort never could. Pain has a way of awakening sight. When everything is peaceful, motives are hidden, intentions are blurry, and loyalty is assumed. But when you walk through hurt, clarity is born. You begin to see people not just as they appear, but as they truly are. Pain becomes the lens through which maturity forms, sharpening your ability to discern voices, alignments, and relationships in ways you never could while living untouched. There are seasons when God will allow betrayal not to destroy you but to reposition you. Sometimes he permits the wrong person to enter your life just long enough to push you toward purpose. The betrayal of Joseph became the doorway to the palace. The denial of Peter became the revelation of Christ's mercy. The wound from Judas became the fulfillment of redemption. Pain is not always a sign that you miss God. Sometimes it is evidence that you are walking straight into destiny. When people hurt you, God extracts wisdom from the experience. The hurt becomes a teacher. You learn who deserves access, who carries honor, who responds with sincerity, and who should only remain a memory. Pain also exposes parts of yourself you did not know were fragile. It reveals insecurities, triggers, beliefs, and inner weaknesses you would have never confronted without the pressure of brokenness. But God does not expose weakness to shame you. He exposes it to strengthen you. There is a version of you He is building strong, stable, emotionally mature, spiritually discerning, and that version requires refinement. Gold does not shine until it is placed in fire. Steel does not become strong until it is hammered. Likewise, destiny does not become pure until pain has refined it. There are people whose actions pushed you closer to God without realizing it. Their absence made room for the presence of God. Their rejection redirected your path towards something higher. Their betrayal forced you to learn dependence. Their harshness awakened your spiritual sensitivity. Pain becomes a compass, pointing you away from what is harmful and toward what is divine. Even when you thought the hurt was destroying you, heaven was using it to sculpt your character. Pain shapes your discernment by teaching you to look beyond words and into character. It shapes your wisdom by training you to make decisions based on truth, not emotion. It shapes your strength by teaching you to rise, even when everything around you tries to pull you down. And in the end, the very experiences that try to break you become the foundation upon which God builds the unshakable version of you.